Welcome to Scandinavian MIND Weekly, our show about the current trends and events within business, tech, fashion, design, culture, and more from the Nordic perspective of our team of editors and contributors. Today on the program, we take a look at the new AI tools that generates images from text. How does that work? We'll talk about that. Also, fashion tech startup Biorestore restores and revives garments to a new state. And of course, we report from the transformation conference that took place in Helsinki during the week. I am Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind, and I'm here with my dear colleague Erik Sedin. Erik, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to hear about Helsinki. I need my own little report.
Exactly. We haven't been able to talk actually since I got back 2 days ago, and we have a bit of a Helsinki special coming up online, right? There's a guide coming out today as well.
Exactly. Helsinki takeover this whole week, basically. I know
That's
you
wonderful.
guys been talking about Infinited Fiber company and Spinnova and stuff. We've posted some news on the site too, so full on Helsinki fashion tech takeover.
It's coming full on. So our fashion tech special from issue 3 is rolling out online, and today we have a wonderful guide to our favorite city, Helsinki. I'm looking forward to reading it, even though I just spent 3 days in the city. So
I can just say, like, me writing and editing these guides, I've talked about it on here before. I get an itch. I need to go these places, but I'm gonna dare to say this is probably the best guide we've ever done, because
let's give some highlights from the guide.
Yeah, so it's first of all, it was written by Annika Tammi, who's a store manager at Artek's iconic flagship store in the heart of Helsinki. So basically, what she did, usually when people we ask for these guides, they give us one answer. Oh, your favorite breakfast place or your favorite go place for a walk. She gave us like 3 or 4 per question. So like me sourcing all these images and going through all these places took like almost 2 hours yesterday, because it was so many and so great. And she's giving tips on amazing up and coming fashion designers in Helsinki. And I can't say too much. You have to, as soon as you finish listening to this, go to scandinavianmind.com and just indulge in amazing Helsinki.
Yeah, and I think it really we're coming up on the golden months here of visiting the Nordics as well, and Helsinki.
Yeah.
I was actually I want to go back with my family now. I've been in Helsinki a few times now for work, obviously preparing for the conference and everything. And there's always been, great restaurants. Just visiting the Savoy legendary restaurant. We had dinner there Monday evening. Had drinks on the terrace in the sunset. I mean, it's just beautiful. From the sunset, you can actually overlook the water, the inlet that goes into Helsinki, the big esplanade. Park there in the middle. It's just beautiful. So I mean, this is happening to all the Nordic cities right now. They're coming up in full bloom. But
Yeah.
I want to go back. I want to read this guide.
Did you pop by the Moomin Land? Is that in Helsinki even?
I don't think that's in Helsinki, and it's definitely not on the itinerary for Helsinki Fashion Days. So maybe that's something I'll go back with my daughter to visit.
I heard a lot of good stuff about it.
Let's jump into our first bigger story here. You have been looking into these awesome new technology. You just showed me some images which just blew my mind, but you know more about this. There are new AI tools coming out. There's some interesting reports on this online, new videos you can see. It's basically a tool that lets you generate images, artworks, just from text. So should we just try to explain what this is to begin with?
Yeah, of course. So we've heard about AI, how they can read images, like they can learn what's on an image and you can turn from image to text. For example, me, myself, I don't know about you, but I'm an avid Instagram desktop user. I like to go on Instagram on my desktop, on my Google Chrome. Okay. And sometimes it just lags. So as you're scrolling, no pictures show up. It just shows up text. Like Instagram's AI telling you what's on the images.
That's happened to me as well. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool, and that's nothing new. We've seen this, but this is a bit different. This is a video that Vox uploaded on YouTube. Vox is one of my favorite YouTube channels. So this was on Wednesday, and they basically go through how this all started, and basically it was the beginning of 2021 how these deep learning AI models, they are now incredibly capable of creating completely original images from text prompts. You can put in any text you want, and some of the pictures I sent you here, you would probably never guess what I put, what kind of prompt I put. And this is not so good for podcasting, but we'll put some images in the show notes. So, for example, if you look here, I put Yosemite in a bowl of ramen. That's the second picture there. I put a journalist making juice. I put Alvar Aalto dancing in the style of Salvador Dali. And like you can see, you can kind of agree with me. They look pretty good, right? Like they look like proper art.
This is art. I mean, let's start an NFT collection from this. This is wonderful stuff.
So anyway, I started experimenting with this on Wednesday, and I was quite stunned how much it had developed, because I could imagine like some AI tools making collages. If you say like monkeys in a field, or I don't know, a journalist watching a concert, an AI a couple of years ago could probably just take pictures from the internet, put them together in a collage. But this is like something completely different. Well, in this video, I recommend everyone to watch it. We'll put in the show notes. It explains everything far better than I will. But for example, when I post on our Instagram page, our Scandinavian Mind Instagram page, I can sometimes add alt text for SEO and for the algorithm. So if it's a picture of you, I'll put your name, I'll put the name of your jacket brand, I'll put the name of your glasses that you're wearing. So it gets a bit more detailed. And this happens on all major news sites, all over the world. If it's a picture of a stockbroker on the stock floor, it would say stock floor marketer is stressed about the current situation on the Nasdaq or whatever, instead of just white guy in a suit. So these kind of machine learnings, these deep tech and deep AI, they take hundreds and hundreds of millions of these images with these alt texts. It can create extremely, extremely, extremely detailed pictures. For example, if you put like 1960s coffee, these images will learn that, hey, in the 1960s, these are kind of the colors that they would use, like these dark reds and light blues. And people wore this, and photographs are taken in this kind of light, and then it can make an image that just looks like it's from the 1960s.
Do they talk in the video or in your research? What are some of the applications? I can see it for art or art projects or. But this is really abstract what you're showing me here. But are there any practical applications to this?
The ones I've shown you now, and the people that you guys can see down below in the show notes, these are from a free one. I just used a free one on the internet. There are really, Google probably has this on lock. That costs a lot of money to use, but they talk about, hey, if you're like a creative person in some way, imagine having this like genius little computer buddy that if you want some pictures, you want to get some creative ideas, you just put some text in, and you can bounce ideas off this computer extremely easy. And also, like, what happens to stock photographers or stock artists if you need something for your website or for your magazine like us? So what happens to these photographers? It's not all a happy video. It kind of goes into the dark sides of it as well.
That's like basically what you do when you're looking for images for a creative project, and you go online and you're just searching for like, I need a woman standing under a tree looking happy or whatever. You need now we can just say that or type that and you get it instead of have to search for it.
And there's also no copyright, and that's also the problem, because in this video they show how if you're like a famous illustrator and you have your very specific style, you could actually put in all these machine tech learning places, you can put in like editor drinking a coffee in the style of blah, 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 blah. And it looks very, very similar. So artists get their stuff stolen, or it's not really stolen. It's an image that doesn't exist, an image that doesn't really, no one owns it in a way, but you still steal the artistic value of someone.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. But I can see it from a sort of testing out ideas, trying things out really fast, and in kind of AI circles, there's you always use this example of Jarvis from Iron Man, where you have this kind of AI buddy. You have kind of like you have a computer or a phone today. In the future, you will have like an AI you can speak to. That's your own personal AI that will just, in the movies, I think he stands in his workshop, just generate the red one or blue. Let's add some hot rod in there. And that's a classic scene. It's not actually him doing it, or it's his computer just applying or acting based on commands. So that's one application that I see.
And I know, of course, I think people listening to this, it could be like, oh, these AI, they probably, but you've seen these pictures. This is from a free one that I just used on Chrome now. They look pretty nice. Like if you, and I can imagine people could be like curators, and they can learn how to use these, and like what can you put in, what kind of prompt can you add to the machine, and what can't you do for it to actually work. And also this video, for example, like I said, it's about a 15-minute video from Vox, and Vox is like, for me, like the pinnacle of tech journalism, absolutely perfect. Anyways, they always go into these like moral or other issues that could be a bit more sensitive. For example,
Yeah,
these machine learning AIs, they get taught stuff that you probably wouldn't teach your children, like this is from the internet.
of course.
So, for example, if you just type CEO, all the pictures that they get fed are white guys, white old guys. Or if you put nurse, it could be only women. So maybe you will teach your children, or we get taught in school or whatever, that it can look different. It's not all black and white. They are taught from the internet. They are taught from 100 millions of pictures that people have just added over the years.
Well, that's the problem with AI generally, is that it learns from what is there. So I mean, that's the sort of bias towards certain skin colors and races and so forth. That's been hugely problematic with some of these, especially face recognizing technologies in airports and security cameras and so forth. And there have been several instances of having to deactivate some of these technologies because they pick out people with darker skin, for instance, and flag them as potentially criminal and so forth.
Exactly.
There is also a long article in New York Times. We can put that link as well, of new image search technologies, but you upload a face of someone, and it scans the entire internet, excluding social media, but in the entire internet of images of this person. And it was a really interesting article. They had used 10 reporters from the New York Times. Some of them, they have uploaded images with people having a mask, face mask, and it could still find like 11-year-old wedding photos, or being in the background of a concert photo from a festival 15 years ago, and including. So it was super impressive how perfect it was, but it was also not perfect because it could actually pick out pornographic video images and so forth that was not the person's that was uploaded. This super scary technology, super interesting but super scary. Obviously, you might not. There is photos out there of you from the past 20 years or so that you might not want people to see.
Of course.
And this relates to these types of technologies. Comes out that the AI, the technology in itself, does not make judgment calls on how it's used. It just operates plainly from simple prompts.
Yeah, and it's the people holding the strings, the developers. They are the ones. What intentions do they have? Like they could have really bad intentions. I don't know. And who owns these pictures? Who's like the rightful copyright owner? Let's say I make like an illegal picture of some sort, or am I the owner, or did the AI create it? Is that the owner?
I think, but I mean, we have seen use cases. I mean, we had Jakob Fellander, the artist, on the cover of a second issue, and he's been working on, generating 3D kind of metaverse spaces from his two-dimensional artworks, and the 3D versions of his art. That's not him generating that. He doesn't program that. That's an engine just interpreting his art and like generating. And I think he even talks in the interview, or I can't remember if we put it in or if it's just off mic. But he talked about how he could potentially generate his own kind of metaverse that's bigger than the known universe. That was the capability just from his artwork that he's been working on for the past few years. So, but it goes to the copyright question. Is that his world or is it?
It's all very, it's on this podcast. Usually that's why we need guests to have the experts here telling us how it works. But it's always good to discuss and try to wrap our heads around stuff. But of course, we'll share this we'll share my art that I've created this morning on social media, and you guys can see it. It's pretty impressive.
Well, Erik, don't quit your day job just yet. All right, moving on. There's a new fashion tech startup on the horizon here from Sweden that I thought we'd highlight. We have an interview with them up online that our colleague Johan Magnusson has wrote. It's a company called Biorestore, and I've met them a couple of times at various fashion events here in Stockholm. I also met them last night. I was at the um, uh, uh, investor impact meetup that Nordic hosts every quarter. They were there pitching. So this is a company that it sounded kind of ridiculous the first time I heard about it, but then I saw it with my own eyes yesterday, and we have explained this in the article. But let's try to do it justice here. They call themselves a retergent. So they have some a science kind of backed invention where they restore textiles basically to textiles that has been kind of washed out, worn out, with fading color. They're able to uh, use their product and have it look almost as new. I'm not sure that explains it. Do you have a better explanation of this, Erik?
Yeah, just from reading the article and watching the pictures, the pictures first when we uploaded this article, I was like, oh, these pictures are probably, like all good pictures, highly edited, and the contrast turned up a notch. But you said that you saw it with your own eyes how
Yeah.
mixing cotton and mixing different materials like wool, they will start to pick, or whatever it's called, like the loose and knot and knits and knots will come out, and it just looks, the color gets kind of, I thought, like, looking at these pictures, that was like, oh, that's probably like the sun or like washing it too much, the color gets a bit more light, it gets brighter. But when you zoom in, it's just because of the cotton is just, it's trashed and it's used. So I don't know if they told you there, but do you just throw it in your washing machine with this like detergent, or do you need something special to, like,
No,
somewhere
I think
special to
you
do?
use it as a regular detergent like once, and it's
Mm.
supposed to revive the garment in this way. And it's it's super early on. They have a Kickstarter campaign. I mean, I saw at the event last night that they were highly sort of sought after by different investors. They were just speaking to after the event. There was like kind of like this fire round of 3-minute pitches that they were part of.
Mm.
It's founded by two guys located here in Sweden, a guy called Richard Toon and Vahayat Hussein. Anyone can go in and research and have a look by themselves and make a judgment call on this. I think what's interesting, and this perhaps goes into this, many of the topics we talked about at the transformation conferences, how can we reuse all that's already produced? I mean, a huge problem with the fashion industry is overproduction. It's the fact that we only use garments on average 3 times before either just hiding them far into our closet, hopefully sending them to Goodwill or other resellers. But it's such a huge part of the produced garments of the world that just ends up on landfills. Um, Only I think it's about 1% is being recycled at this point, and there's a lot of things happening there, and new legislations coming out in the EU in the coming years that will
Mm.
try to change that. But I think, I mean, the absolutely best thing we can do from a sustainability perspective is just to try to use the clothes that we have already produced as much as possible.
Yeah.
um, so I think I think that's why this innovation is so interesting, and why we really enjoy highlighting it in the Scandinavian Mind platform.
Yeah, and I just from watching the pictures, I really want to give it a try. That's the thing with me. I buy clothes quite far apart, like maybe like 3 years apart, and I have my clothes for a long time before I buy new ones. And they look, on that third year, they can look quite roughed up. And I buy new clothes when they literally like break, or I get a stain that I can't get
Right,
away. That's when I
right.
buy new clothes. So this looks perfect for me, because if you put a lot of money and effort into your clothes, you want them to look good for a long time.
But it's also, I just actually, on a personal note, I just did a huge sort of cleanse of my closet, and I had bags of clothes from the past 10 years that I've had in my basement, and I just did a huge, purge. Try
Great.
to, I have too much stuff basically, and it's been interesting to see what's happening on the market, because there are many different resellers now. And my wife did the same, so there are a few more options for women. I think there's a wonderful store in Stockholm called Arkivet, which are great at sort of curating the best fashion from. They only take stuff from 2 years old. They know exactly what
Mm.
they want. Super picky. They have a 90% sell through of their clothes that they take in. 90%.
Wow,
That's crazy.
that's
No
great.
other
Yeah,
physical, no other fashion store has that high of a sell through. It usually is like 50%.
yeah. Mm.
But what I found also was like, okay, so I have kind of a variety of styles, some tailoring. I have a big chunk of Oscar Jakobsson clothes that I could hand into their sort of secondhand store that they have in Vasastan in Stockholm.
Oh,
A
cool.
bunch of stuff I could leave to a new company called Rerobe. I think we've mentioned them sometime
Yeah, yeah.
in the platform. And other stuff I that was also more leaning towards the tailoring. I sent to our friends at Pete and Harris, which is more towards sort of tailoring suits and that sort of stuff. So I had a little, obviously we need to go in this direction, and I'm sure um, like resellers like that are going to be hugely interested in this Biorestore technology. So if they can, get clothes that they can refurbish and sell at a higher markup, uh,
Yeah,
it's going to be so interesting. But it also got me thinking that
true.
probably we're aiming towards a world where, um, I mean, there are estimations that the resale market is going to be bigger than fast fashion if it goes in this direction.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yes, these are really optimistic numbers, but think about it. If we are producing somewhere in the vicinity of like 100 billion garments a year, it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be defendable to throw them away. So we
No, of
need this
course.
kind of a new circular loop. And what probably is going to happen is we're going to need as many variations of styles and style subcultures, or various fashion stores catering to different target groups. As many as we have on the kind of virgin clothes, we're gonna need on the second hand side as well.
And you went to, didn't you go to like this like American workwear, American surplus place? I saw it on Instagram story. What
Yeah,
place
yeah,
was
I was
that?
getting there. I mean, that's a good example of a store that has great curation called Broadway and Sons, legendary
Broadway and Sons.
menswear
Yeah.
like military surplus. They're great at sourcing vintage Levi's 501s, kind of Carhartt workwear, that type of
Mm.
stuff,
And
Western
in,
boots.
in and also in contrast to this stuff, like that, you kind of buy them with the paint splatters on it. That's part
Oh
of
yeah, I
the.
bought a perfect pair. There's so much you can't make that stuff up. Maybe an AI
No.
can do that in the years to come, but to have like a perfectly stained pair of kind of
No,
carpenter pants,
has to be organic.
that's the kind of stuff I like. But they know exactly what they want. You can't go in there and buy like a Swedish fashion brand. They wouldn't take that stuff. They have a very
Mm.
specific taste, and which that's how fashion works. You need fashion to be curated. You need it to cater to a certain audience, and we're gonna see more and more resellers, secondhand shop, vintage shops popping up, and it's interesting to see that it happens, because that's a very old type phenomenon that we need to help create a more
Yeah.
sustainable fashion industry. But we also could have enjoy support from innovations like Biorestore. All right, I thought we'd just end this podcast with a few words on the Transformation Conference, second edition, the first part of this collaboration that we have with the Helsinki innovation industry, Helsinki Partners. The town of Helsinki is one of the sponsors of this. We did the first edition now in Helsinki on Tuesday. We're going to have the second edition in Stockholm on August 25. So make a note in your calendars. Invites will go out. But really, I was so happy about this one. Super happy. 60 guests, very limited. 20 international journalists present from everywhere, from the Forbes magazine in the US, Wallpaper, Financial Times, ID magazine, several of the fashion ones. So just to give a little bit of a context, we did this conference in part to support the sort of fashion tech innovations that are growing out of Finland and Sweden, and it was part of something called Fashion in Helsinki, which is basically, it's kind of like the Finland's fashion week, and they do it once a year in conjunction with the Aalto University graduation show, which is a big important event for recruiting talent for some of the big fashion houses in Europe. So that's why it gets this sort of international flair to it. But we had representatives from some of these innovation companies that we're writing about currently. Spinnova was there, Infinited Fiber Company, Metsä Spring. They were all talking about how to produce new fibers that turns into new types of textiles, and we will be reposting these conversations in the podcast in the weeks to come. Also had a great kind of fireside chat with talented writer and author called Alec Leach. He has written a book called "The World is on Fire, but We're Still Buying Shoes." Quite enjoyed that. Alec is a truth sayer, to say the least. It was a bit awkward. We had a lot of representatives from the fashion industry, and he's very, very critical of the way we are consuming fashion right now. So I quite enjoy that. I'm sad to say, Erik, I felt like you missed out on this one. I would have loved to have had you there, but for sure be there for the Stockholm edition.
Even though I wasn't there, 60 highly curated minds and experts were there. What did they think? Did you hear like some inputs from them, some reactions?
Well, I think to begin with, I mean, we're obviously toting our own horn here, or whatever the expression is, but it was so positive afterwards, and I think in part people are super happy about getting together again and having these conversations in person. I think that really makes a difference. I think what's interesting, the reflection, I think we kind of mentioned this prior to the conference as well, is we're in a situation now where in facing the challenges of the fashion industry, we have to start talking about some of these sort of granular technologies. So, I mean, it was unheard of that we 2 years ago would talk about fiber producing companies. Some of these companies like Infinited Fiber are doing collaborations with Tommy Hilfiger, Spinnova is doing with Adidas and so forth. High profile brands are now turning to these really tech companies that creates something called the cellulose fibers that becomes the textiles that we make into garments, and that's a new thing, and that's something that we really highlighted in this conference. But it's also like, I think we are really far ahead when it comes to sustainability in the Nordics, and the fact that this is kind of top of our minds and top of the agenda on a lot of these events here. I think we're kind of unique in that. I mean, it's obviously a conversation that happens everywhere, but the fact that we talk about it so much in the Nordics, we have the global fashion agenda coming up in Copenhagen soon as well. I think that really resonated with some of the participating guests, and I actually thought we could end this podcast with just to hear a few reactions from the participating journalists. I took the chance to just briefly talk to a few of them afterwards, and so just here a couple of reactions. First we have Dal Chodha, a fashion writer for Wallpaper. Let's listen to what he said. Just wanted to have a quick reaction to the conference that you've just heard this morning.
Yeah.
Some of the topics. Do you have some takeaways?
My takeaways, I think it's really healthy to have these sorts of moments, because I think a lot of us in various ways are having these conversations, and quite often these points feel like closing of chapters rather than opening of new ones for me, in the sense that it confirms a lot of our suspicions, our fears, our anxieties and our hopes. And gives us a bit of a framework for kind of maybe also to celebrate the work that has been done, but obviously that reminds us of how much more we have to do.
Wonderful. How much do you cover sustainability, innovation, that sort of thing in your work today?
It's impossible to ignore. I think what's interesting, and again, the feedback from what we've heard a lot of people talking about today, is the avalanche of information that we're sent regularly from brands professing to align themselves with more sustainable outputs. I think questioning that is something that we need to do maybe a bit more. I think as journalists, perhaps we're just happy to be fed stories, but sometimes we're not as critical of those stories that we're sent. I think I'm going to do that a bit more going forward, but I think, also I work at Central St. Martin's, I work on the fashion communication program. So the idea of sustainability, ethics, diversity, all of these things are impossible to ignore. So they find their ways into all sorts of conversations.
And I'm always curious to hear people from outside the Nordics, their perspective of the Nordics sort of landscape. There's a lot of talk about kind of Nordic values and a sort of a shared maybe aesthetics. How do you see it from kind of more like an outside perspective?
I think it's interesting. It's slightly tricky sometimes because I think a lot of the conversation that happens within the Nordics or from that point of view doesn't easily translate to other parts of the world, particularly in the UK or let's say the States. So I think there's a sort of there are different challenges I think that exist in the UK, for example, when we talk about ethics or when we talk about sustainability, all of these things. So I think it's interesting to look at what we can understand as best practice, but like with anything, it's really important to think of the context. And I think the political, social context of this Nordic approach is incredibly different to what we have in the UK. And so it's kind of working out which bits are applicable and how they can be, I guess, spread in a way that is useful to everybody.
Do you have an example of something that is applicable, that you find inspiration from here?
Definitely. I mean, I think the focus on people and humanity, that again, it sounds like a very grand kind of Oscar speech sort of thing to say, but it's really healthy to be reminded of that all of the time. And I think in a lot of the time I spend with students is often just reminding them that we are just people. So just be nice.
Just lastly, is there something from your experience here in Helsinki in terms of brands, designers, stores, shops, something concrete that you've seen that you're going to take away with you?
I think I came in November as well, so I think learning more about just the attitude to material objects that is probably quite Nordic, but felt very Finnish at the time when I was here, and still is. I think that's what's really fascinating to me. The value that is placed on something isn't necessarily just fiscal, it's much more emotional. And I think that's something, again, that's a value that can be and should be shared far and wide.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that was Dal Chodha, fashion writer for the Wallpaper. I also had a chance to speak to Yasmin Jones-Henry, really thoughtful writer for the Financial Times, covering both fashion and the investor side of things. So she was a great fit for the audience. I really enjoyed talking to her. Let's hear what she has to say. I just wanted to grab you here real quick after the conference and get your first impressions. What were your sort of key takeaways from listening to the panels today?
Well, I track investment trends across fashion and sustainability, and it was really fascinating to actually be able to understand and almost quantify what the Nordic value is and their contribution to the wider design landscape. I also found it really interesting that the investors themselves are starting to completely pivot their portfolio to support, up-and-coming Finnish startups. That was super interesting to hear.
Wonderful. And I'm always curious, from inside the Nordics, we always talk about kind of our shared values and our shared platform. From the outside, do you look at the Nordics as kind of a cohesive space with shared values, or is it more diverse than that?
I think it's a bit of both, actually. I think in the same way we speak of European, and that's a catch-all, we know what that means. I think with Nordic, in contrast, let's say, to the US, Nordic people know that it's very much more in tune with nature. They know that it's much slower in the sense that it's not naturally fast consumption, it's more quality driven. Those are, the kind of blanket terms. But within that, I've learned Helsinki is a completely different vibe to Copenhagen, completely different vibe to Stockholm, and that's really important too, that each of these cities have their own distinctive, unique selling point, if that's the right term.
So as a journalist, when you come to a city like Helsinki, what are you looking for? What's on your sort of antenna?
Okay, well, the first thing is accessible culture. Is this something where anyone from anywhere can walk in and really get to grips with? The answer is yes. I think the other thing that I'd be looking for is, with the climate crisis, I always look at challenges being an opportunity. I'd love to see what are the solutions that they're providing that's different to what's being done with designers in London or in Paris. And that's absolutely the first thing, or second thing, that I'd be looking to see. Yeah.
Wonderful. And in terms of visiting the fashion in Helsinki now, visiting some of the brands, designers, shops, is there anything concrete you take with you in terms of a piece of clothing or a designer that you really enjoy?
This? I can't remember the name. I think it's Nomen. We went to visit their
Nomen Rescue.
Thank you. That's literally a takeaway. I bought this off the rack yesterday. So yes.
And hope to see you here soon.
Oh, you will.
Thank you so much. All right, those were some reactions from Transformation Conference. Obviously for us at Scandinavian Mind, super important event. We've been working on it for a long time. And again, it's not over yet. August 25 in Stockholm. Invites will be going out, but mark your calendars. We're gonna have, it's gonna be a little bit bigger audience, so we have a chance to take in, I think, about 150 people. So if you are listening and want to come, there will definitely be room for you. All right, Erik, I think that was the show. What do you look forward to in the week to come?
For the people that follow me on Instagram, I recommend great content. I was at a concert last night. I saw The Hives. So I have this, I bought this like season ticket at Gröna Lund, which is like an amusement park in Stockholm. So they have like 50 concerts all over the summer. So, and it's really starting to pick up the pace now. So I'm going to see Toto, I'm going to see Tom Jones, Dua Lipa, Sarah Larsson, twice a week, three concerts a week.
I love that you say Toto and Tom Jones before Dua Lipa. I don't know, are you like 65 years old?
I just wanted you to know the names, that's why.
Oh, whoa. Right back. Well, hopefully I'm going to try to catch Florence and the Machine at the Rosendal Festival in Stockholm next week. So it's definitely concert season. I like that. It's a great tip. Anyways, catch our Helsinki guide is online now at ScandinavianMind.com. As usual, if you don't follow us on Instagram and our newsletter, visit ScandinavianMind.com/newsletter. This has been great. Till next time. Bye.
See you.